Howdy folks. So I have no doubt that everyone is familiar with these credit card point of sales terminals, and I happen to have one, and I'm going to be tearing it apart in this video. This one's not that old, it's from about 2017 or so, and I'm sure that no one is going to be surprised about what's inside of here. Obviously, we know the core components of these things, that's no secret. The reason why I'm interested in taking this apart is to look at the security and the anti-tamper mechanisms that this thing is using, because this has a problem that is faced by a lot of embedded electronics, and that is that there are secrets on here in the form of encryption keys that the device itself needs to be able to use, but they can't leave the device and they can't be maliciously used by a third party. And so this is a difficult problem to solve, because when you think of things like cloud services and I'm using cloud services as a simple example. There is you simply have a data connection, and it is possible to write a protocol that is secure, perfectly secure. It's possible. I'm not saying it's always the case. And then there's another level of like a physical device that has something on it, but that physical device is something that maybe the user cannot possess or take home or has unfettered access to. So this would be kind of analogous to a bank vault, where there's something in the vault, but the vault is there to slow down the attacker and to sort of restrict what they can do long enough that they get caught in the process. But this kind of application is kind of like a small safe with some money in it. The attacker could just steal the safe and take it home, and then they could spend as much time as they want getting it open. And it doesn't matter how good the safe is, eventually you will get into it. And so that is the kind of problem that this has to deal with. There's secrets that are physically stored on a chip inside this device, and yet the device needs to be able to access those secrets, but someone like myself who has one of these at home, I can't get at those secrets. So the way that it's usually done, and the way it's almost certainly being done here, is those secrets are essentially held hostage against some sort of anti-tamper mechanism. And so really, like in that bank, or sort of in that safe analogy, the only way to prevent the attacker from getting the money is to detect that they're trying to open the safe and then set the money on fire inside of the safe, so that by the time they open the safe, because you can't stop them from doing that, the money will be gone. And that's essentially the way these have to work. The keys are usually stored in SRAM or in some sort of memory that once you open the case or you start trying to physically access the chips, the data is erased. And so when you eventually get to the level where you could actually read data out, the data is gone. And so that will be interesting to see how they're doing it in here. There are a few things that I'm almost certain are being used. So I guarantee you under this front panel, for this button panel, there's going to be some extra fake buttons that are always pressed. So as soon as you take the cover off, the buttons are no longer pressed and the device is going to erase itself. I'm sure there's things like that. We'll probably see some interesting potting around some chips, I suspect. That's the way I would expect it anyway. But anyway, just to show you what this is the iWL250. That's the model here, and it's pretty straightforward. So it's got the the thermal printer. There's no paper in here, obviously, but it's just a little thermal print head. I have the dock for it. It's a 5-volt 1 amp. Just some contacts. You just place it down, and it uses just a simple 18650 with a little connector on it here. So there's probably a thermistor in here. That's why it's got the third wire. And so that just sits in here. It came with a SIM card, although it has what appears to be slots for 2 additional SIM cards. There's a micro SD slot, which was not populated, and then it has a micro USB connection, which I suspect this is for setup and programming. I'm not going to bother to actually plug that in because I don't really care. And of course, this unit does work. It was working when I got it. No, I didn't steal this, by the way. I bought it just for the whole purpose of this. So it starts up with a smiley face, which is kind of funny. And you know what? If you were the person who got rid of this and sold it to me and you didn't wipe your data, well, it's not my fault. And it just goes through all the different versions of all the different pieces of software on here. There's really nothing that I can do with this anymore because it's not linked to anything. So it doesn't really matter. We'll just unplug that. Not going to need that anymore. So let's get into this. I'm sure this thing probably still has keys on it, but as soon as I take the cover off, it's not going to have keys on it anymore. So there are a couple Torx screws, some warranty void things on here. So I'm going to probably have to get these feet off as well. So I'm going to start taking the case off, and we'll come back once I've got something open. So I've taken about 7 or so screws out. You can see that we've got the nice little anti-tamper sticker here. So again, it's all going to be about tamper on this primarily. So well, let's hope this comes apart, or otherwise you're not going to see this clip because it's going to get left on the cutting room floor. Okay, here we go. So the back comes off, and there's nothing really all that exciting on here. Let's see if we got a date code. This would be April of 2017. So I was right about the 2017 date. So that's just plastic. We don't need that. And here is our board, and already you can see that there is a CR2032 coin cell. So this is almost certainly what is going to be holding up the SRAM that the encryption keys are stored in. So yeah, this gives credence to that theory. So the way I suspect they're so basically if you're familiar with any common PC, right, you've probably heard the term CMOS. CMOS refers to CMOS SRAM, essentially, which used to store information about your BIOS settings. It's not stored in CMOS; it's stored in Flash now, but they still call it the CMOS because it's still present for like legacy reasons. And that's the thing that the button cell holds up in addition to the real-time clock. So this thing probably has a real-time clock as well, and this is going to be holding up the SRAM with the encryption keys in it. And so there's probably going to be a bunch of different mechanisms, and any one of them, they're all going to be in series. So if any of the anti-tamper mechanisms get tripped, the power is going to be lost to that SRAM, and its contents are going to go bye-bye. And then you're going to probably have to send this unit back to whoever to get it securely programmed, probably through that USB port, if I had to guess. Actually, I should probably have checked if there's anything on the back cover, because I don't see any buttons or anything on here that would yeah, I don't see any false buttons on the bottom here, but I do see there's this metal rail here. It's the only piece of metal in here, and so I wonder if this metal is being used as anti-tamper, because it would be on this side. No, I'm starting to think that might be related, because this is the credit card mag stripe reader, which I don't even know why I guess they still need these for legacy cards, really. I don't know what the point of that is anyway. Gift cards, I don't really know what the point of that is, but anyway, it might be just for reinforcement because people are probably super harsh on this. Interesting, that's it's got some nice rubber damping on that. So let's see, can I get the front off, or oh no, okay, I think the front comes off as well. So this is almost certainly going to have the fake buttons on it. So let's take a look here. So we've got a little faceplate here, and this one says Chase whatever on it. So this is the part that would probably just get swapped out for the different brands, because this is a Ingenico brand. So Chase didn't make this, so this is obviously just like a rebrand. So this is just a piece that they get to be custom branded. And it's kind of funny is there was actually a sticker on the outside of this which rebranded it a third time, which I thought was pretty funny. I took that off because it was all nasty, but this you can tell the quality of the different rebrands. This is like the better way to do it. But anyway, the case is just ABS. Not interesting. And so this is the button panel, and so I suspect there will be the false buttons behind here. And so let's see if I am right. Yeah, you can basically see. Yeah, so if you see here, there are these posts in between the buttons, and so when you flip it over, there are pads here in between the buttons, and they go down through this membrane. And so I suspect there's going to be contact pads. When we get down there, we'll be able to see those. So basically, if you try to lift this this button pad basically anywhere in between the buttons, like you try to pry it up, one of these 6 false buttons will be undepressed. So this cable here is probably the contactless payment antenna. So it goes all the way around the display, and yeah, so this is just for structure. So it really just goes around the display. So anywhere in that area, which makes sense. It's nice and large, roughly, you know, I'd say roughly the size of a card. So that's pretty neat. I didn't know where the antenna actually was, but never seen one of those before. Most of the teardowns of this stuff I've seen are of much older units that don't have that kind of stuff. And I haven't checked. I'm sure there's probably somebody else who's taken one of this model apart on YouTube, and I'm not going to watch it because I just want to explore this for myself. That's the whole reason why I got it. It was just a couple $. So there is a broken screw here. So this thing's probably been dropped or something at some point. So I've taken a look at it, and I think I know how to get this apart. So this top backboard here, it has a little board-to-board interconnect here, and we can kind of tell what this is just by looking at this side of the board. So this is going to be our I believe it's only 3G. I think this is our 3G cellular modem. So this is going to be the antenna. So this little flat flex here has got the antenna in it. You can see it's printed. It's probably like a quarter wavelength antenna they've got printed on here with a little UFL connector. And so this is going to be our cellular connection. So it's got the 3 separate SIM card slots. So I find that to be kind of crazy. I could see 2 SIM cards, 3 seems a bit much to me, but I'm not really sure what the use case of it is. It's possible that one of these is not actually used for like network identification. It's used for some of the other features of SIM cards. If those are even used anymore, I don't really know. We have a small chip here. This is an NXP part. It's probably some sort of I'd say it's probably a power supervisor or something. Just guessing. The connection to the antenna for the contactless payment is also tied into this, so it's possible this does that as well. And then the actual modem we have here is a Sierra Wireless high-low 3G-850. So yeah, that pretty much confirms that it is a 3G modem, and this appears to be it's soldered on. So it has a board-to-board connector down here. It's kind of interesting because it's a daughter board. It's got a CAN on the top and on the bottom, and then it's got a little board-to-board interconnect just like this, but lower profile, and then the antenna comes straight out of it. But it's actually soldered to the board, so I'm not going to bother to take that off. We've got quite a bit of bulk capacitance here for its own DC to DC. This is probably needed because of the transmit power or something like that. But this is pretty straightforward. This is probably a part you could get for anything, not just it's probably not specifically made for these, but maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, I took out that broken screw, and then this plastic piece comes off, and so this is just a guide for all of the little I wonder what you want to call them, the little nipple things on the bottom of the button panel, and it's also got the directional pad. The little plastic for the directional pad is built into this, which is it's kind of a cheap way to do it, but it feels okay. And then we've got a little insulating layer, and you can tell there's some chips under here, and we've also got some side firing LEDs here, so those would be to light up the keypad. And this might actually be adhered right onto the board. Let's see if I can peel this off. Yes. Oh, this is okay. I see. So this is actually the button mechanism itself. So that's not like we were gonna go back anyway. And I'm gonna have to take the display off to get this off all the way. But this is interesting. So it's not using. I guess I should have noticed this from the beginning, because there's no carbon contacts on the bottom of these buttons, and so what they're doing instead, because carbon contacts obviously they wear out, they have a finite lifespan, because the conductivity of the special metallized rubber over thousands of key presses, it eventually gets to be too high resistance to be reliable anymore. So to get around that, because obviously this thing's going to be used in an industrial setting, they're actually using proper tactile domes, but instead of the sort of the tactile domes that you solder directly to the board, they've actually got the domes separate from the contact pads, and the domes are actually stuck to this membrane, and so they're just using the rubber to just press on the domes. So it probably would provide a much clickier, nicer tactile feedback if they didn't have a rubberized keypad, but they probably use the rubber for, I'd say probably maybe like moisture and liquid ingress. Someone accidentally spills something on it, because if you had a bunch of little tiny separate chiclet keys, the water just goes straight through it into this, whereas with the rubber membrane it has to go off to the edges. So it might be done for just reliability. And what's interesting is you can actually see that there is a weave here in this, and I hope that you can see this in the light, but where this chip is, you can see that there's actually a zigzag pattern of a trace or multiple traces that are inside this membrane, and I suspect that this is tied to the anti-tamper. So the idea is, if you're on this side and you're trying to get through this membrane to the PCB on this side, by cutting or digging a hole through this or tearing it or whatever, you would end up breaking one of the traces in this mesh, which probably goes all the way through this, and then of course that triggers the anti-tamper. So that's pretty interesting. But let's see if we can get the display off, how this assembly works. It's almost off. So let's get the display and the thermal printer off, because they are both on this assembly. And I don't really care about taking these off correctly. So we'll just pull on these connectors, and that's underneath there. Oh, okay, you know what? That's good enough. So let's take a look at the display and printer assembly while we're here. So this is the printer assembly. It's pretty straightforward. We just got our thermal print head here, little tiny stepper motor, and that's just the connection to our print head, and that's it. Super simple, quite compact. And then we've got the display assembly here. Well, actually, we've got this. This is just the cellular antenna, which is just on this flat flex, which goes around the paper roll. That's why it's flexible. Which is kind of this UFL here, and then there's just a little board which just has the contacts for the charging, which goes straight to the board, and it's just a mechanical assembly. And then we've got the display itself, which just has a standard flat flex on it. You know, whatever the part number is. It's a color LCD. You know, it's backlit. It's pretty bright. Obviously, it needs to be bright because it's going to be used outdoors sometimes. And you know, nothing special there. And so here's our board on. Let's see, which side should we look at. Let's take this off. So this is another piece that comes off. It's on another. Is that a? No, that's not included. Okay, so that just comes off. I'll take a look at that later. This is the head. This is just a magnetic card stripe reader head. So it's basically just like a cassette tape head, but larger, essentially. It's just got some conductive foam here for grounding, and it's on a little metal. It's on a little metal frame, which I can probably get out of here if I just pull this a little bit. Let's see. Yeah. So it's basically just held on by these two little arms here, and you can see from the way that they've formed this that when you press on it, it just acts like a little spring, keeps a constant light amount of tension on the card to keep it right next to it. That's probably quite reliable. You know, this technology is so old that it's basically perfected at this point. And so we're back to the board again, and on the back side is a can. We'll take a look at that. There's the connector, which went to the cellular modem, USB connector. We have our battery, of course, which is soldered on, so it's not in a holder. It's actually it's welded to some tabs, and the tabs are soldered to the board. So this is basically designed to last for the life of the device. So this thing, it's almost certainly only used when this battery is not physically present. So it's being used now. Obviously, the contents are long gone in the memory, but it would be powered by this whenever possible. And these CR2032s, they have a sort of a shelf life of about 10 years or so. So that's probably how long this thing would be guaranteed for. And then after that, it just comes down to how good the battery was and how well it was treated. We've got a little buzzer here, which makes all the beepity beep noises. And now we can probably pull off this membrane all the way. And let's see, is there anything more interesting on here? I suspect that the way this probably works, if I had to guess, because there's no actual connector on this, the weave that is through here probably connects these pads, the fake buttons, to each other in probably maybe a 1-to-1 or some kind of mapping. I'm actually going to save this. I'm going to get my multimeter out and I'm going to check that once I'm done here. And then we have the rest of the board here. There's this strange part here, and I thought this was actually part of the connector for a second, but it's not. It's PCB material. It's quite thick PCB material, and you can see that it has an overhang over the connector here, so it's designed to sort of form fit over that. So I'm a little intrigued by what that is. So that's kind of interesting. I'm going to inspect that a little bit more because I don't really know what that is. And then we have our main processor here, and it is a Mana FT3X. I'm not really sure you're supposed to say that. It says SP3. Late 2016 manufacturer. So this is going to be our, it's probably going to be like an ARM or a MIPS processor. It's basically an SoC. It's going to have RAM in it. It's going to have the flash for the programming. It's going to have everything on it. It's going to have the USB controller. It's going to have all sorts of stuff on there. And my suspicion is that this would be where the secrets are stored. But I'm really quite intrigued by what this thing is. Especially because of the fact that it's got a number on it, and I'm really intrigued. This might be secure memory, like it's encapsulated in PCB material, which would be super interesting if that's the way they're doing it, because I expected a potted, like a potted blob, because the way I've seen it done before is you take like the memory chip that you want, and then you basically lay a mesh of very fine wire over top of it in a grid, with power going through it, and then you pot it. And so the idea is, because you're using like a hard epoxy potting material, as soon as it hardens, it's very brittle. And so if you try to chip through it to get at the chip inside, you're going to break that super fine wire, and then it's going to trip the anti-tamper. But I don't see that anywhere in here. And while I do believe that this is obviously going to be protecting this chip and the buses around it, something tells me that this might be security related, so I'm going to see if I can take that off the board and see what's going on. There's one unpopulated pad. It's pretty much the only unpopulated major IC on here. This is almost certainly power supply related stuff over here, so that's not really all that interesting. Now before I move on to that, I forgot about the big can on the back, so I pried that off. And this is where all the normal stuff is. So we've got our flash memory here by Toshiba. This WinBond chip is going to be our either SDRAM or SRAM. It's probably SDRAM. And then we have a larger chip with the same Moniftex. I don't know how the hell you're supposed to say that. And so it's probably the companion, of course, to this chip. It's probably a chipset. So yeah, this is probably our applications processor, which has got, of course, its flash program and its RAM. And then this is probably a lower power sort of security based processor, which handles all the I/O and everything with everything else. I can't believe I forgot that. And then there's in here, this is the actual chip reader. So it has a this is actually just a piece of flex PCB, but it's got a full copper fill on it, and it is soldered down in 4 points, and so that's going to be just a big shield. But I've got a multimeter now, and we can take a look at just the way that this matrix is done. And I'm not sure if it's going to be dead short or if they're going to have like a fixed resistance, because that's the way that like home security used to work. They wouldn't put a dead short on any of their anti-tamper stuff. They would have a fixed resistance. So if you cut the line, obviously it would go open. But if you tried to short the line before you cut it, it would also see the change in resistance, and it would go off as well. So I should probably check the full resistance here on some of these. Yeah, see, so there's like that's open between there. There's 1K between there. That's open there. Open, 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 open. All right, so I'm not sure where that one connects to. I'm just going with the gold ones because those are the ones that are definitely part of the anti-tamper. So far there's only 2 of them that I've actually seen that are connected to each other, and it's these 2. So that's kind of interesting. I would have expected all of these to be connected, but it's possible they're connected somehow else, and I really don't know how. So that's odd. Yeah, because I can see when you look through here, there is a trace that connects. It runs through here, it goes off somewhere under here. There's a trace that runs around over here. So yeah, I find that a little odd, but it's possible that I've damaged this by peeling it off. That's definitely not outside the realm of possibility. But yeah, I can really, so there's 1K there, and there's 1K there. Okay, so that's a crisscross. So yeah, so that's 1K, that's 1K, and everything else is kind of not quite connected. But anyway, that's enough for you to get the gist of how this works. So I've taken this piece off, and as I was taking it off, I realized what it was for. It's not actually connected to the ground plane. It's got these points here where it goes through the board and then solders down in 2 points. This is definitely not grounding. And then when you flip it over, it confirms my theory. This is another anti-tamper mechanism. So the idea is that this covers up this slot so that if you try to access by going in through this card slot, you have to penetrate this. And again, this has a very tiny, fine weave of traces which are connected to all of these different points. There's 2 per tab, and if any of those get broken, then of course the thing erases itself. So it's actually a very cool texture. I wish this was Feel-O-Vision, but that's not a normal pattern you see etched onto a PCB. So that's kind of, or a flex PCB, because that's really what this is. It's just a flex PCB, but it's not as flexible as normal because it's got so much copper in it. Because it's basically copper fill with a little tiny bit of mask in between. And so then, interestingly enough, we have another one of these kind of weird, strange pieces of layered fiberglass as over here, and it's got the same UNTI on here. So I'm not sure what the deal with that is. And this is this piece, the plastic piece, is not interesting at all. It's basically just the contacts. You can see them in there, and that's it. It's just a guide and some contacts that go straight to the board. There's no actual electronics in this plastic piece, so I'm not super interested about that. So I've decided what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to pry it off the board and see if it's boring or if it's something interesting, because I have no idea what it is. And well, let's find out. So it has this lip which makes prying it off the board quite nice and easy. And so you can see that it has 6, sorry, I hit the camera there. It has 6 contact pads on it. So it is electrically connected. So it's not mechanical or anything like that. So that's definitely interesting. And I bet the one that's down here is the same deal. So let's just pop this one off as well, if I can get under this one. I may not be able to do that with this plastic thing on here. Let's see if I can break my side cutters trying to remove this. Oh, actually, it might just come right off. No, it won't. A little bit of damage has to be done to it, but that's okay. This shows you how it's made. Oh, and there's all sorts of little plastic bits everywhere. That's fine, the vacuum will get it. So, this thing comes off here, and so we've just got the pins here. They're nice spring contacts, and we've also got this, which is just, I believe, what is left. Yeah, it's just what's left of a switch that I've ripped apart. So the idea is that it doesn't actually energize these contacts until the switch gets depressed, and then it knows that all the contacts are in the right place, and it can safely apply power without shorting anything out or backpowering the card. Obviously, the contact positions and everything would be figured out such that even if power was applied, nothing bad could really happen. At least I'd hope so. Hope the engineers figured that out. But that's really all that is. And there's just some passives and power supply stuff here. But yeah, then there's this other one of these devices, and so that one popped off again. Again, six pads here. So I think really we've gotten as far as we can on the board here. And the modem is not really that interesting, so I'm not really going to bother with it. So this stuff, really, it's kind of all scrap. I'll take the battery because it's got 3 volts on it. But I think the real interesting part is going to be these things, because I get the feeling that these are the secure memory, and they're actually encasing them in fiberglass. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and cut one of these open and see what's inside of them. Because there's definitely some active circuitry inside these things. But I'm intrigued as to why there is 2 of them and why one of them is much larger than the other one. It's possible that this one is needed for communications and this one is needed for the chip and pin functionality because it's physically close to the card reader. I really am not sure. I'm sure there's probably information online, but I'm going to not look it up. I'm going to just figure it out on my own. So let me go grind this stuff open and see if I can find anything interesting. So I've started opening this. It's a very, very tightly woven fiberglass. This is not your normal PCB material. This is a lot harder than that. And so I've tried crushing it, and I'm slowly kind of chipping away at it. And hopefully you can see this in the light, but right below the top layer of metallization, there's this zigzag pattern to the left of the chip here, and I'm hoping that that is visible in the camera. And so, this is very clearly part of the security. The idea that because this material is so hard that if you were to try and get through it, you would end up you'd end up breaking something, and there's probably multiple layers of it. And it's probably much cheaper to do this than to do sort of the epoxy mechanism, because this is essentially just a big multi-layer circuit board, and so you can make these just like normal circuit boards and have lots and lots of layers of these very tiny intricate traces that are kind of acting like tripwires. So I'm going to keep chipping away at this. Well, it's been quite a while, and unfortunately I don't have much good news. So the first unit, the small one, I continued to sort of crush it up, and I didn't find anything inside of it, so I took a more methodical approach with the second one, and I took a Dremel and I sanded it down just a 1/10 of a millimeter at a time, and I inspected the edge as I kept going until I got to about the quarter or so that's left here. And I can say that I didn't find any active circuitry inside of it. Basically, I didn't find a silicon die. That was what I was looking for. And it's possible that it was just so small that I just didn't see it. It's possible, given the fact that it doesn't have to store a lot of data. Modern manufacturing processes for SRAM are very small. It's entirely possible, but I don't know. I really did expect to see something. I really wanted to get a microscope shot of a die, but unfortunately I just didn't find one. So I did find a lot of vias that go between the top and the bottom layers. So you know, there's definitely signals on the top and the bottom, and I guarantee that there is some data storage that happens in these modules. You know, I expected it to be SRAM, but you know, I was thinking as I was doing this, is there any other way that they're doing it? Like, is it possible that, you know, they're using vias, they're actually designing the boards to store data, and that doesn't make sense because there's only 6 pads. There's just not enough. There's just not enough data, not enough bits you can encode in that. Plus, I feel like if you had, you know, if you had an X-ray, you could read the data out. So that's not it. And I don't think that they would be doing any kind of strange trickery with analog signals to sort of store data using, you know, thin film resistors or something on those layers, because again, not enough data, and it would be far too unreliable. So I don't see them doing that. So I think that there probably was a die, but it is powder now. And I've washed all the equipment, and I didn't see anything. So it's if it was there, it's down the drain essentially. So I wanted to see something, but unfortunately, I just didn't. But if you know, if you know what's actually inside these, by all means, let me know. I would really love to see it. You know, I suspected there was a pocket or something where the die would be. You know, essentially, you make half the PCB, you put a die on it, you bond it, and then you complete the PCB on the top. Because that is a manufacturing process that is well established. You can get PCBs and stuff that actually have like inductors and transformers built into the PCB itself, and they use that exact mechanism. And so there's nothing that stops you from putting a semiconductor in there instead of like a coil of wire or something. So that was what I half expected with this. But I mean, regardless, you know, it did its job. This thing's very difficult to get into, and if you know, there's no way that you'd be able to get into this without disturbing any of the anti-tamper mechanisms, and that's why this thing is so secure. But anyway, that really concludes this. There's not much else to see. You know, it's just the stuff, and pretty much all the stuff that you expected to see, in addition to the things that you know, the most interesting things unfortunately didn't work out. But that's the way it goes, and I'm not going to go get another one of these just to take it apart, because my curiosity has been satisfied at this point. So I think I'm all good. So anyway, that's what's inside of a relatively modern, you know, 3 or 4 year old sort of credit card point of sale terminal thing. Not really sure what you actually call these. But anyway, hopefully you found that interesting. And until next time, thanks for watching.